It would be very helpful if people start to realize that addiction to making money is just as bad of an addiction as alcoholism. Some people find their refuge in drugs. Some people find their refuge in sex. Some people find their refuge by seeing whatever portfolio amounts they have grow into infinity.
It's 2025. Happy New Year to all our viewers. I'm Dale Walkinen, and this is Facing Future. The beautiful gatherings of family and friends, which follow the darkest and shortest day of the year, also follow a feeding frenzy of shopping, consumerism's massive winter feast, amid the polycrisis of our time. As we accelerate the destruction of our living world, what once seemed harmless frivolity now seems dangerous ignorance as nature's benevolence turns to fury. I'm delighted today to welcome my friend Sylvie Rokab. Sylvie leads mindfulness workshops online and in the forest. She guides us to rediscover a true sense of purpose, which comes from a deep connection with nature. The title of her film states a new and necessary commandment: love thy nature. Why are we doing this to ourselves and our companion species on this earth, and how can we cope with the grief and rage that many of us feel toward our own species? Sylvie, what do you think?
Well, first of all, Happy New Year, and may this year be really filled with possibility despite the horrific challenges we're facing. First of all, how did we start? It's very clear to me that it really starts with what story has our civilization told itself about who we are as a species on this planet. And I've always been really inspired by the stories of indigenous tribes, or indigenous nations, I should say, all over the world. It doesn't matter. Pretty much all indigenous tribes have had a story that is based on the idea that life is at the center of our existence. Everything that we do has to be in promotion and in the health of ourselves and all of the beings around us and our planet. Now, when it comes to like Eastern traditions, wisdom traditions of the East have had a story that has to do with, like, it's called really the interdependent co-origination. The idea that all things emerge in relationship with each other. Now, the story that became the dominant story, unfortunately, really emerged from the European traditions that are centered in the Christian Judeo traditions, where in the Bible it's been said, or at least it's been translated as, humankind is supposed to have dominion over the earth. Now, new theologists are now saying that it was a poor translation and that it was supposed to be stewardship of the earth. And so what ended up happening is that even at the time of the papal bulls in the 15th century, the so-called the doctrine of discovery, basically the Pope gave the green light for European rulers, mostly at the time first Spain and Portugal, to go ahead and take the lands and even enslave the people that are not Christian and white. So basically the whole story of colonization, and also it was dictated that those lands could be extracted. So it was really from a place of extraction, from a place of aggression. And of course, the Cartesian model of our scientific model, as much as science has given us a lot of benefits and incredible, really, discoveries for the well-being of the human as well as our planet, the scientific realm was all about the Cartesian model of breaking things down into tiny little pieces that were not connected really with each other. And only recently we have quantum physics and systems theory that is looking at the big picture and is bringing in things that the wisdom traditions of indigenous peoples and the East have been telling us all along. So, Dale, I know I tried to summarize something that people are taking decades to study, but I brought up the highlights that I feel to be really relevant about this point. And the part about coping is basically they're incredible practices that those traditions that are indigenous and that are bringing the mindfulness teachings of the East, and that now neuroscience is proving through thousands of studies that can make a huge difference in how we can not only live our lives with more ease, allow ourselves to feel our emotions with more depth instead of pushing them away, and find ways to relate to each other that can be transformational for ourselves and other people. I'm very,
So
go
we
ahead.
have the full range of human emotion, from anger and grief, which I mentioned in my introduction, to joy and compassion. And, we all have all of that. So accepting, I suppose, our worst emotions and allowing them to manifest and then transmute into some other type of emotion is probably the goal of coping. But we have reached such a point in our process as humanity that we are, on the verge of the cliff. And very few people, considering the billions of people on the earth, are actually aware of how serious the problem is. And even in this culture where people are supposedly educated, which is the most destructive, the American culture, most destructive and really unbelievable stupidity of our recent election is putting us in a place that's very, very worrisome, and makes us kind of the negative leader, I'm afraid to say, of a new process for humanity, which is taking us toward extinctions that have occurred in the past. And we don't know how extensive this one is going to be.
Yeah, you bring up really incredible points, and it's going to get much worse before it might get better. I mean, that's really the truth that we have to face. And like you said, we humans, I mean, it's been said, people who study human emotions, they've been saying that it's like we have more than 500 emotions. And the unfortunate thing about our cultures, our dominant culture, is that by repressing those emotions, what happens is that they live in our bodies. There's no way that we can, wishful thinking to say, oh, I have rage. I'd like to blow up all these people who voted in a way that seems maddening. And at the same time, if we were to act on it by, of course, I'm not saying that anybody's going to explode a bomb, but I'm saying just by lashing out at other people and even judging them or pointing the finger at other people, what happens? I mean, you tell me, Dale, if you're at a dinner party with relatives and friends, and somebody might say, hey, I support the other guy, and because I think of XYZ, if you're going to point the finger at them and say, you dumbass, or whatever, how you want to call them, it's not going to go very well, right? So the idea is we know that by repressing ourselves and repressing other people, which is our MO, or judging ourselves and judging other people, that is also our cultural MO, it doesn't work. We've been trying this for what? I mean, how long has our environmental movement been around? Perhaps since Rachel Carson? I
There was
mean,
some knowledge of it in the previous, the century before last and before that one, but very little. I mean, as
right,
soon as we started putting carbon in the air, people started saying, hey, this is a bad idea.
right.
And we know that Exxon and company did studies and saw, wow, my God, this is going to be catastrophic, and
True.
did nothing. It's
In the
hard
20th
to
century,
feel
yes.
compassion for such people. And it does make you feel just enraged that people could be so incredibly stupid that they would not protect their living basis.
Yeah.
But here we are. We live in the Holocene, which has been an incredible period of good, beautiful weather. that never happened before. If we can see in the historical record, we didn't have this kind of great climate for very much of Earth's vast history. And every time you put this much carbon in the air, we know what happens. And when the methane strikes, we know also what happens because we see it in the geological record. Um, so nature was our provider, our friend, our mother, everything. We love nature. I used to lie on the ground and think, oh, I'm part of the earth. It's wonderful. And now I think, mommy's going to kill us.
Yeah, I mean, the upheaval that is happening all over the planet. I was listening the other day to biomimicry co-founder Janine Benyus, and
Mhm.
she was talking about the extraordinary findings that certain species are really starting to adapt to conditions like migrating differently, or like flowers are being seen in places that they hadn't been seen before. Now there are concerns that the pollinators might not be following them. So the natural world finds its way to adjust, right? When we think about the Gaia theory, which James Lovelock, who was a scientist, really started the realization that, it can become comparable to a single living organism. So I'm bringing this up because one way or another, all of the different systems are reacting to what's happening. More carbon dioxide, more methane in the atmosphere, and who knows what other effects might be happening that we don't really know about, scientifically speaking. So, what else can be done except to just accept what is happening at the same time that we're fighting against it, if you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say is denying the realization that our planet is unraveling in some very scary and furious ways, as you say it, is the same way as, digging a hole and being like an ostrich and putting one's head in the dirt. For those who might be at the head of oil companies or whatever, who might not want to see the reality of what fossil fuels are doing. In the same way, we cannot believe that by, not feeling our emotions or not addressing the way that we're experiencing this unraveling, it can be just as damaging. And so I think that what I would invite everyone who's listening to consider is the possibility of really experience the grief, because it is very real. Experience the fear, because that is also incredibly real. And experience the anger, that is also another piece of what we're holding, and to say it is okay to feel all these emotions. And I just want to end with the work of Joanna Macy, because her work has been incredibly influential in my own understanding, and a whole field that's called eco-dharma that has been emerging. David Loy as well, both of them are Buddhist scholars, and they have really come from a place of how do we join the wisdom traditions of the East, the understandings of mindfulness, bring it into our lives, and at the same time, we become empowered, energized to really pursue our environmental mission and whatever other mission and purpose we might have in our lives. But the idea is having rage and fear and grief is not the end of the story. Those emotions are here to tell us something. They're here to tell us we need to wake up and we need to unite. We need to find community and do the work, the practices that are incredibly important to regulate ourselves emotionally, to join others in the fight, and come from a very clear mind and an open heart to dive into the solutions.
Well, whatever happens, it doesn't benefit us to be in a dark state of mind. Impermanence was always true. We are mortal beings, and all planets go through different phases. We know that our planet is a volatile planet and has had tremendous volcanoes in the past, has had superstorms, and we have caused more of this to fall upon us because of our putting carbon in the atmosphere, and acidifying the ocean is the really incredible tragedy. We know that the corals have disappeared before, and it takes millions of years for them to come back. And this may be the case. We may be millions of years before the planet really recovers or creates some entirely new paradigm, which is what it's done in the past. We always knew that things were not forever. Nothing is forever. And we know that we ourselves are mortal beings. Our species eventually would peter out as the sun became too hot. However, all of those things can be somewhat helpful in thinking about it. Okay, this is reality, and I can still be good to people and still live a good life, whatever time is left to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say, realizing that right here and right now is really what we have, the power of the present moment, the realization, like, especially if someone is going like in a real rageful or like in a situation of feeling really angry or deeply upset or profound depression or sadness or whatever it is that might be arising, it's really important to arrive back in the body, really sort of like self-regulate from a place of realizing, okay, where I am right now is fine, nothing is falling apart. And we need those practices of being in the present moment, realizing all we have is here and now. Because what happens tomorrow, we don't know. I could be going out the door, Dale, and then a break might fall on my head and I'm dead, right? So it's kind of like you said, impermanence is an incredibly powerful teaching and practice to realize everything changes. Civilizations rise and fall, right? So, and that's to say, there's the reality of the moment, there's the reality of the world, and even by self-regulating and feeling that we're okay, we can still fight for what we believe.
The name of the game is self-responsibility.
Yes.
The Christian tradition of praying, help me, intercede for me, and many other religious traditions have that idea, rather than I am responsible and I can take useful action. What is the useful action for me to take? That I believe is what you talk about in your workshop, which I believe you have something coming up soon, for helping people discover, well, okay, what is my purpose? What is the good life that I can have for me at this time? And how do I serve nature and life itself?
Exactly. And I love how you say, like, we have full responsibility, because that's something that can be really misunderstood. And I do realize that it's like, yes, we have full responsibility for how we react to things, the choices that we make in our lives. How do we want to pursue our own life purpose, our true north, and also the relationships we have around us. And at the same time, realizing that there are forces in the universe that our little 3-pound tofu in our brain cannot explain. Do you know what I mean? There are, and the indigenous peoples have had incredible practices for like millennia that really has to do with helping them align themselves with what might be, like, if there is a dream of the earth or is a dream of the universe of creating the human species, because we didn't create ourselves, right? We emerged. And it doesn't matter what you believe in, right? It doesn't matter if you're atheist or if you're from one religion or another or your belief system. It's just the idea of being open to quantum physics, the fact that at a very minute level, there's intelligence everywhere. And there's certain things we cannot really explain rationally, but we can feel them. The body can feel, like the intuitive realm, the realm of the heart that now it's been shown recently that it's got gazillion neurons, just like the brain. So the heart and brain connection are incredibly important. It's not like some romantic woo-woo idea of a Hallmark card. There's science to what people have known intuitively for millennia. How did they know? How did the indigenous know not to eat certain plants? But hey, other plants are medicinal. It wasn't trial and error because we wouldn't be around if that was trial and error. It was really a communication with the natural world that is very real. And now the realm of psychedelics is exploding. There was an article in the New York Times recently that talked
Yeah.
about major corporate leaders now doing plant medicine and fungi medicine like psilocybin, and that has changed their perception of how to be in the corporate world and bringing up vulnerability, bringing up the sense of interconnection with the rest of the world. Who knows if meditation and forest
Mm.
bathing and practices that are mindfulness practices and plant and fungi medicine that are gifts from Mother Earth might actually help us to save our planet. Who knows? I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying it's a possibility. And it sounds really, really exciting.
Well, if business leaders could shift from the idea that their goal in life is to get richer and richer and to amass more of the world's wealth to themselves and have some idea that, oh, well, wait a minute, I have this other happiness that comes from being connected to
Yes.
humanity and nature, that would be incredibly wonderful. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very interesting development that's happening,
Yeah.
of business people becoming more
Absolutely.
aware.
It would be very helpful if people start to realize that addiction to making money is just as bad of an addiction as alcoholism.
Mhm.
So some people find their refuge in drugs. Some people find their refuge in sex. Some people find their refuge in consumerism. Some people find their refuge by seeing whatever portfolio amounts they have grow into, how do you say that in English? Infinitus? English is not my
Infinity.
first language. Infinity, thank you. So, the idea is to really realize these folks have a problem. And of course, they're going to be denying anything because that gets on the way of getting their drug, which is the billions, the money. I'm not saying all of them, of course not.
Yeah.
I'm just saying some people have this issue and they need help. And who knows, those of us who can self regulate, who can have conversation, who can present some points from a place of compassion and trying to find what unites us all at the root of our human existence, at the root of our species, I think we have a much better chance of being able to help them transform.
Sylvie, you have an event coming up soon online. I believe it's a free workshop for people. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I'm really excited about that. So it's one of my favorite workshops that I've been teaching at places like Esalen. And it's called Revitalize Your Purpose. And what I do is to really help people anchor themselves into what is really true for them. And different people have different experiences of how they relate to their purpose. Some people might be confused, other people might have no idea what their purpose in life might be. Other people are really clear about their purpose, but they feel like it's kind of stale or it feels helpless or hopeless. And so, what I offer are teachings on how to really revitalize, get crystal clear, and then also revitalize the purpose so that it feels juicy, it feels exciting. I mean, here we are, January 1st, to really inspire ourselves. And whether it's like the first month or the first, it doesn't matter. I mean, the beginning of the year is kind of like an opportunity for openness and possibilities. And so that's why, especially with what happened with the elections here in the United States, I felt like we need to really realign ourselves with what is truly important to us and how we can make it happen in a way that feels exciting and beautiful and possible.
Well, people learn by experience rather than by being convinced by someone. So to have the experience of some kind of workshop, some kind of tool, some kind of learning may transform people. In my audience, Many people are like, we're cooked, forget it, and they don't want to hear anything positive. But, I invite those viewers of us that we have to take some time to, as you say, realign yourself to a more amenable and happy time in your own life, and also to help yourself, really take the actions that are needed. If you're an activist, get out there and protest and do everything you need to do. Write the letters, go see the Congress people, go and talk to business people. Whatever you can do is fantastic. And the more you have energy for that, you will have more energy if you're less upset. It can be so horrible. You just can't stand to life, but you can't stay there very long. You have to transition to something else that will allow you to be, a more useful and active person.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And also, we're not cooked until we're cooked, So,
Yes.
in a sense, it's good to remember that. And we end up it's like, I want to now speak to your viewers, those of you who are here watching, consider the fact that by self regulating, by bringing a sense of calmness, bring a sense of ease, connectedness with others, even bringing joy into your life can be incredibly revitalizing. And we need you. We need you inspired. We need you energized. We need your thoughts, your mindset, and your possibilities. And so, really awakening a sense of really sort of like how can I say this? A sense of belonging to all that's happening, accepting things as they are, at the same time that you can see possibilities from a place of being refreshed and rejuvenated, can be incredibly powerful for yourself, the people that you work with, that you live with the world. And perhaps I'm preaching to the choir too, so forgive me if I am. But, really inviting you to look at 2025 as a year that might really ground you into beautiful teachings, into the possibility of you can transform your life, the lives of those around you, just by example, even not by preaching necessarily, because preaching doesn't work, but by example. And also helping to transform our world, because again, we're not cooked until we're cooked.
It's not over till the fat lady sings.
Right.
Okay, Sylvie. It was really great to have you here today and to talk
Lovely
with you,
having
and I
you
really
here.
appreciate this conversation.
I really
So thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you. All the best to you all who are on the call.
And Happy New Year to all our
Happy New
viewers.
Year.